Good stuff. All right, then. Well, today we are going to. Like I said last week, we kind of finished the theory, you could say, of the course. Now, last week was the last lesson really of the theory, the energy healing part 3 that we went through, and I guess it's a fitting lesson to finish that on, really, isn't it? It's the most advanced forms of healing. So from now on, we've got more kind of functional lessons, you could say. So we've got 2 lessons of case studies. We're going to do one particular case study today, then we're going to do another type of case study next week. And then we've got a lesson on the research project. So we've gone over the research project in a lesson before Christmas. But now we're going to go over it in more detail, and we're going to go over the protocol of the research project, so everyone's aware of exactly what we've got to do and what responsibilities we have and our procedures for the research project. And then after that, I think it is the exam lesson, which is just a lesson to go over the exam, but then you've got time to go away and do the exam. So yeah, we're almost there with the theory year anyway, and we move into the practice year. So let's start today then. Right then, here we go. So lesson 38, case study number 1, and this case study is very much linked to the research project. In fact, this particular case study is the reason why we are doing this particular research project, as it will become clear. So there's 2 case study lessons this week and next week. The first one, which is today, which is a case study 1, and here we're going to be talking about a real case, and it's going to be a case of severe asthma. So this is a case, I'm not going to mention any names because this is going out online, of course, but it's a real case that we worked on, and that we're still actually working on in various other forms. But the asthma part of it was a specific time period, which we'll go through in a second. So that's today. It's an actual case. And then next week, what we're going to do is we're going to give a fictional example, but we're going to go through the whole procedure from start to finish. Yes, so in the second lesson, case study 2, we're just going to go through the whole procedure from start to finish, so that we can get all the steps in. And to do that, it's easier to use a fictional case because we can make up what we want and we can show all the steps. Now, you've gone through this before in Joining Network Healers lesson, where we took you through the different forms to fill out the joining forms, structuring the healing journey form, and you had a fictional case of asthma to work through. It's going to be a bit more of that, basically. So a reinforcement of those principles and those procedures from start to finish, when you get a healing partner to start all the way through the different joining forms, structuring the healing journey form, and into the actually having meetings with the healing partner. And by the way, I think I missed out a lesson there as well when I was giving you the number of lessons. There is a lesson on role playing as well. So there is a week, but it's not going to be a lesson. It's going to be more individual. And we're going to organise a time and do a quick role play with you guys. Anyway, so back to today. So case study 1 is severe asthma. And by the way, as we go through this, as normal, of course, please do interrupt and ask questions. But it's, especially in this, we're going to also try to use our intuition. And I'm going to ask you questions as well, because we don't know everything about this case yet. We're still trying to work a few things out. It's a learning process. And this reflects how Network Healers is going to work. Our high minds give us knowledge and information about what's going on in the healing, and sometimes we have to interpret that and use our intuition to do so. So during this lesson, I'm going to be asking you guys questions as well, see if we can engage your intuition to get some more answers to build on the knowledge that we've got already. So a quick overview of the participant, or the healing partner in this case. She was part of the clinic program. Now, she was diagnosed with brittle asthma, which from an early age. And brittle asthma is a very severe form of asthma, and they call it brittle asthma, but it's a very severe form of asthma which actually can combine various different types of asthma. And she was, when we first started the healing process with her, she was on full face nebulizers, every day, and maybe sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, even constantly on the Ventolin and the salbutamol inhalers. And she'd had frequent asthma attacks throughout her life and in and out of hospital. And there were allergies present, so allergies can also be a part of brittle asthma. I'll go through asthma, an overview of asthma in just a second, don't worry. And I've put down there very low score on AQLQ. That is Asthma Quality of Life Questionnaire. Now, we didn't do that with her, and I don't know if it had ever been done in her medical history, but I've put it down there just so that you're aware of that questionnaire, and that is going to be one of the questionnaires that we'll be using in the research project. There's going to be lots of different questions and feedback and data that we're going to have to collect from the participants, but this is a standard questionnaire form to judge the quality of life or the well-being levels of a person suffering from asthma. Asthma Quality of Life Questionnaire. And we're guessing here that it would have been a very low score. And I've done a bit of research online showing, the different cases of severe asthma and where they would score on this questionnaire. And our case study here, our healing partner, she would have scored very low on this particular questionnaire. So let's have a just quick overview of asthma. And we are going to go through the anatomy as well in a minute. So I'm going to bring up that app, the Complete Anatomy app, and we'll go over the lungs again just to remind you, so that before we go through this lesson, you've got a rough or a reminder of what asthma is and the different parts of the anatomy that it affects. So, asthma is characterized by a constriction of the airways, and I'm going to show you what the airways are on the diagram in a minute, but of course we're talking about the trachea, the bronchi and bronchioles, and even the airways through to the nose and mouth. So it's a constriction of those airways. Now that can happen, that's a natural response in the body, of course, but in asthma it goes into overdrive. And it can be activated by various things like allergens. So allergies is a big part of many types of asthma. Pollutants or irritants or infections sometimes. Now what happens is that there's some malfunction in this process, and the inflammation starts kicking off as a result of these allergens or pollutants. The inflammation cycle in the body starts kicking off, and it goes into overdrive. It malfunctions a little bit and goes into complete overdrive, and it is constantly being activated. Now that creates all sorts of havoc in the airways if it doesn't stop. If the mechanism to stop the inflammation doesn't get carried out, it's just chronic inflammation. Now there is an overproduction of mucus which happens. Now mucus is a natural part of the lining of all the airways, and it's designed to trap irritants and allergens and things like that and clear it away. And cilia is a big part of that process as well. Cilia are little hairs, like tiny little hairs that line the airways all the way through the airways, and they help. Along with the mucus, they trap anything coming into the lungs. So they're a bit like a filter, really. And then the mucus carries it away, and the cilia actually help the mucus move. So very important parts of the respiratory system. And over time, because of the inflammatory response, which is constantly happening, you get damage. You get damage to the epithelial cells, which is the linings of the airways. So over time, all these cells just get constantly damaged, And as a response to that damage, there is scar tissue that forms over time. And that's what they call airway remodeling. The airways get even more constricted because of this, because there's so much scar tissue that starts forming in the airways, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, which exacerbates the problem of constriction. And genetics can play a big part in many forms of asthma. So hereditary genetics, for example, a malfunction of the inflammatory system or cycle can be due to genetics in the cells that are involved in the inflammatory cycle. Yeah, and then panic is a very large part of an asthma attack, and it makes it worse. Yeah, because it activates the fight or flight response, and that actually constricts. Well, I'm not sure exactly of the details, but yeah, panic definitely makes it worse. Yeah. So let's just go to the Complete Anatomy app to understand a little bit more. Give me 1 second. So there we are, the respiratory system. Take away some of these things so that we can see a bit better. Laura. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the airways coming from the nose here. We've got the airways coming from the mouth here. That leads into the trachea, which is this tube that comes down the throat here. And then the trachea leads into the bronchi, which is these big tubes here. And then, if I take away the lung there, you can see that the bronchi, which is the big tubes, lead into bronchioles, which are just smaller tubes, the branches of the bronchi. And then the bronchioles will lead into even smaller ones, and smaller and smaller and smaller, until you get into the lung tissue itself, which is where the alveoli are, which are the air sacs, which we use to breathe. Now, I'll show you a more detailed model in just a second. But the airways run from the nose and the mouth all the way down through the trachea and the bronchi and the bronchioles. Now, you can also see, another thing I wanted to mention here, is that you can see a good example here of close-up of the trachea. But here you've got muscle as well, that's called smooth muscle. And it's called smooth because it's a type of muscle which is autonomous, it's controlled automatically. But this is the muscle in between these rings. These are cartilaginous rings, by the way. But in between, you've got the smooth muscle fibers. That's what actually constricts the trachea and the airways. Okay, so now let's go to the other model. Go to bronchial tree in the detailed models. You can see here, these are the alveoli. On the end here, these are the alveoli, the little sacs which hold air. So we breathe in air. In that air there is oxygen, and the air comes in and fills these little sacs, and the oxygen diffuses into the blood system. These blood vessels here, these red blood vessels. And at the same time, carbon dioxide is coming back from the body, and carbon dioxide diffuses into the air, and then we breathe that out. So these are gas exchange systems, and they're vital, of course, for cellular respiration, keeps us alive. So you can just see inside the alveoli there, and you can imagine that if anything is blocking that, like mucus, then it's going to cause a big problem with breathing, isn't it? And that's what happens. There's an overproduction of mucus as part of this cycle, and cilia get damaged. Now, there aren't any cilia in here, but there are cilia inside these airways. And there's smooth muscle there, and then the lining will be epithelial cells, which gets damaged, and scar tissue forms, and this just restricts. And cilia get damaged, which means that it can't shift the mucus anymore, and mucus goes into overdrive, so there's just mucus everywhere as well. So this is what causes the problems with enough air getting into these alveoli. Okay, so that's a quick overview of our case study and asthma itself and what's actually happening. So now I want to show you an extract from the medical information sheet and structuring the healing journey form. Now we're going to be going through this again in detail next week. So you have done it before, but we'll be doing it again next week. But I want to show you an extract of it because in this case study, I want to show you what energy healing has been done. And I also want to take you on a little journey of what we were experiencing while the healing was happening. So this is part of the energy section, the energy healing section of the Structuring the Healing Journey form. This is what we write in the energy healing section. This is what we want to do with the energy healing. So number one, we want to remove mucus. And by the way, I've put in red, I've put the bits that we're removing something, that we're cutting something out. And in green, are the bits that are healing or rebuilding or regrowing, basically. So number one is remove mucus. We want to get rid of all that mucus. Number two, we want to send protection from infections. Now, by the way, we didn't have a Structuring the Healing Journey form when we were doing this healing, I have to say. This has all come afterwards. So this was right at the beginning, this particular case study. So this is an example, sending the protection from the infections. We only found out that our high minds did this afterwards. And I'm going to go through all this and give you a clear picture of this. But sending protection from infections, we realize that that's something that our high minds did, because we don't want the healing partner to suffer from infections while we're giving the healing. And severe asthma is renowned for getting chest infections very frequently. So that was part of the energy healing that we were send protection from infections. Number three, remove allergies or genetic susceptibilities. We want to remove the cause, don't we? So that's part of it. Number four, cut out damaged epithelial cells and smooth muscle cells of the trachea, bronchi and bronchioles lining. So all those cells that have been damaged over decades of inflammation, we want to cut them all out. Number five, we want to rebuild cilia. Now, again, we didn't know any of this while we were doing it. This knowledge has come afterwards, and it's come through Vinaya visions, which I'm going to go through in a second. But we need to rebuild those cilia. Number six, we need to remove scar tissue in the trachea, bronchi and bronchioles. So all of that, those cells which was overgrown and formed scar tissue as a result of all the damage, we want to remove all that as well. Clear those airways. And number seven, we want to rebuild epithelial and smooth muscle cells of the airways, of the trachea, bronchi and bronchioles. We want to rebuild all that. And then 8 and 9. 8 is building new alveoli, or growing or building new alveoli, because the old ones are too far gone. And then 9, we want to remove the old ones, the old damaged alveoli. So that, excuse me, that is what we write in the Structuring the Healing Journey form. And now that is the same pretty much for any case of severe asthma. So we can copy and paste. We can do the same thing again and again and again if the condition is the same. So now I want to take you on this little journey of Vinaya visions, because this is how we have learnt how or what we did with the healing process in this particular case study. Now, as you know, the Vinaya visions are visions from our higher mind. And in this case, it was Veronica who was seeing these visions and writing them down or drawing them. So these visions, Vinaya visions, these were coming through Veronica. And this is why we're teaching them as part of Network Healers, because we want Network Healers to encourage these visions, because this is where knowledge is coming from our higher minds, explaining to us exactly what's happening. Now, this particular case study has a whole book, and I've shown you this before, haven't I? It's a whole book of visions. Now, in this lesson, we're not going to go through this whole book. We are taking a section out of this book because it's relevant to the lungs, the healing of the lungs, basically. But there is a lot more in this book. And this particular case study, this person, she was also going through self-realization. So there's a whole lot of stuff in here that has to do with self-realization and the process as well. And the healing process started with the lungs, and then it went on to other things. And, she's still on our healing list because there's still other things that she suffers from. But basically what we're doing in this lesson and this case study is that we're taking the section out which is relevant to asthma and relevant to the lungs, basically. And just so you realize, there are some explanations. I'm going to show you the pictures, but there are some explanations as well that were written about each vision. And I'm not going to read through them exactly, but I've made some notes on the side to show you exactly what was happening at that time. But also, remember that at this time, we were getting these visions through, but we didn't really know what a lot of them meant. So we were trying to interpret them at the time, which was very difficult, to be honest with you. And it's only years since then that we've gone back and been able to see, that's what we were doing. That's what the healing was doing then. So this information, this knowledge was given to us or to our lower minds without our lower minds knowing anything about it. And we were only just starting to learn about network healers and starting to learn about asthma. So it's taken us years really to understand more about some of these visions. And that's why I also, it's not a finished process. The learning is not finished here. There's some things in the visions that we still don't really understand. So if you guys have any intuitions when you see something, if I'm saying, okay, we don't know what that means, if you have anything that springs to mind, please do say so, because this is the process of network healers. It's healers working together in a group, and someone might get a vision and draw it, and then somebody else might get the explanation for it. That's how network healers works. So let's start. So first of all, here, this was the 18th of the 9th, 2020. This is when we first started. So this picture here, we didn't know that this was removing mucus. So basically, the vision was of some brown sludge coming out of the person's nose, and then some little scoops, scooping it up and putting it in the bin. But yeah, it was only recently, since we've researched more and understood more about asthma, that we understand now that this is removing mucus. Now at the start, if you can imagine, it was about sending healing energy and trying to make somebody better. But this process kind of taught us the level of detail that we need to understand about the cases that we're working on, and the knowledge, how important the knowledge of the healer is to the healing process. Now in this next vision here, we've got our first drawing of the tank, and it was depicted as a glass tank with the healing partner actually sat in it. And then there was this nurse's hat, at that time, if you can imagine, these visions were very new. So we were trying to figure out what they all meant, to be honest with you. So this is a clear depiction of healing to the lungs. But on the bottom picture there, I think what you've got is a clean lung and a dirty lung, you could say. One is clean of mucus and the other one still has got mucus in it. So that's kind of showing us the process of removing mucus. And this is when a type of healing, this is when healing starts. You could say healing started already, but I think it's referring to specifically sending energy healing into the lungs. But we still don't know exactly what's going on here. Basically, you've got the symbol of healing, the nurse's cap, and then you've got a tap. You've got a tap which is opening up, and out of it is coming some form of healing energy. Now, that tap, actually now we know that it's the tap to the tank, the virtual tank, and you're opening the tap and healing energy comes out of it. We don't know what the white and the gold specifically refer to here, by the way. Some white energy, some gold energy, we're not 100% sure. So if you have anything, if anyone has anything that that comes up, then please do let me know. Okay, in this next one, So we're up to the 20th of the 10th, 20. Now here you've got the healing partner on a table, and then you've got healing hands around the lungs area. And we didn't know what, so quite obviously that's healing coming from healers. That makes sense. I think we figured that one out. But there is also a hand over the person's head. And in the notes, it says that that was my hand. And now we realize that that was just showing who the healing or who the healer was. I've written that wrong there. Healing partner showed. That should be healer is shown, because in this case, I was the healer and the case study was my healing partner. So that's actually a vision showing who is actually the healer in this particular case. But we didn't realize that at the time. Now we've got the tank again, and we've got healing energy going into the tank. In the middle one there, you can see a streak of purple going in there. Now we know that, excuse me. Now we know that purple is actually the color of protection. Now I think in the notes as well, I think our Veronica's high mind even gave the word protection as well. And there's a bit more about that in a second. But basically protection, now we realize that that is actually protection from infections. A type of energy healing that protects from having infections. And then on the bottom there is the two girls in the tank. That was somebody else that was on our list, our healing list, and we're not 100% sure why yet. We've got some ideas, but we're not 100% sure why yet the two girls were seeing hugging, but it will become clear. So next we've got a purple cloud above the tank, and again going with this idea of protection. It's protecting from infections. Now then there was a green bit on the edge of the cloud, and there was also a brown bit on top of the cloud. Now you can see how intricate these visions are, and how much interpretation. You're not necessarily given any instructions with these visions. You've got to interpret it. So what we're thinking there is that the green just means healing, because green is often a symbol of healing. And the brown bit, we think that has to do with the hereditary nature of asthma, that there is some genetics going on here as well that has got to be fixed. Because the next one, this happened. If you look at the top diagram there, you can see that the purple cloud, protecting cloud, is starting to turn, the end of it where it was green, is starting to turn into healing energy. And it's that gold and white again, which we're not sure exactly why. But what we think that is that protection is actually turning into healing energy, which is removing allergies. So this is the genetic element to it. This is energy healing going and changing DNA. Now I've put modifying MEs there just to so you know that that's the type of healing energy, of course. I haven't gone too far on listing the different types of magnetic enzymes for the moment, just to keep it simple for the moment. But eventually we can actually start to list what type of magnetic enzymes are going where and doing what job. And the more we know, the better the healing will be. So that top one is something to do with removing the allergies. Okay, and I think the middle one is too as well, but we're not 100% sure. Okay, and the next one. Now we're into January of 2021 here. So here we've got some more removing of mucus. And we didn't know about this overproduction of mucus at the time, to be honest. So we didn't really know what was going on here. There's some more sludge at the bottom of the lung there, if you can see. And for some reason, it was shooting out of her ears. And there was also a claw. Can you see a claw in the top left picture of the lung? There's a claw which is scraping out the bottom of the lung, getting rid of all that mucus. We don't know why it's a claw exactly, to be honest. Maybe there's some metaphor there or something. And then a JCB digger was seen, which obviously adds to the picture of removing mucus, doesn't it? And we don't know why there is more removal of mucus in this particular point, but maybe don't know, maybe it was still being produced, so we had to remove some more of it. So now you can see, and we were just the other day, we were just laughing at that picture, Veronica, of a head and a pair of lungs. I don't think she'll be very happy with that one. So in that picture, in that middle one, you can see that there is golden energy or healing energy, which is starting to go into the airways of the lungs. And we think that that has got to do with cutting. So cutting away damaged epithelial cells of the linings. Now, interestingly enough, in the opposite lung, in the right lung, there's pink areas. We're not 100% sure what that is, apart from perhaps it means these are the areas that are healthy already, that don't need cutting away. And here we have healing energy, which is in the trachea and bronchi, but also going up to the nose, to the mouth, nose, and ears. Now, the only things really that we would be working on that actually goes up to those airways is probably cilia. So we think that that is referring to the rebuilding of cilia. And at the time, through my meetings with the healing partner, she was actually getting visions now and then herself of what was going on. I mean, we haven't made it part of this, but she was the one that actually alerted me to cilia, and she didn't know what cilia was at all, but she was getting these little visions of little hanging fingers. And because I've done it, done cilia at school, I remember doing cilia at school, that reminded me, oh, that's something to do with cilia. So then we researched cilia and we found out, how involved cilia are with the whole breathing cycle and the problems in asthma. So that made perfect sense. And that was about the time that we were getting this vision as well. So that's rebuilding cilia. And by the way, I should say before I carry on as well, there was no contact between Veronica and the healing partner in terms of discussing any of this. There was absolutely no contact whatsoever. There was no discussion at all, just to keep it completely separate. And that's important for something that's coming up later on. So now we've got more healing energy, which is cutting scar tissue away on the top diagram there. Then we've got these hands cupping the lungs. Not sure what that refers to exactly, but it's a similar drawing to the top one. And then we've got this big slap of energy, that big dollop of energy going to the lungs. Now, this is an interesting one. We're not 100% sure what it means, but we think that perhaps it means that in some way regrowth has started, but we don't know why it would be a big slap. In the vision, Veronica saw it just like a huge chunk of energy going to the lungs and, slapping on it, basically. But we don't know why that would be exactly. So the next one, more interesting stuff started to appear. You can see, actually, let me just go back to the last one quickly. You can see in the last diagram there in the bottom right, you might be able to see it or you might not, but there's actually some little red lines going through the airways. Now, we think that has to do with activating cellular regrowth. So we think that the red lines are actually regulatory magnetic enzymes that are actually activating more growth, because in this next diagram there's more of the little red lines, and there's actually regrowth going on now, because these sparkles, you see these little sparkly bits, well, that is growing again. And that was actually given to us at the time, that the sparkly bits is new growth or healing going on. And the healing partner always used to love sparkles in every aspect of life, to be honest with you. Sparkles was just her thing. So I think that's why we were given it in sparkle form, basically. So the epithelial cells here are growing again, and the alveoli are starting to bud new alveoli and grow new alveoli. That's what's going on. Now here, this is a very important moment, this one here. So if you look at this one diagram of the lungs here, you've got the bottom of the right lung is starting to fill up with golden energy. And as you'll see in the diagrams to come, that is going to start filling more and more of the lung. Now, we know, and we figured out fairly soon, to be honest, that this actually means finished. That bit is finished. Yeah. No, absolutely. It was good for you to mention that because that also reminds everybody of the doubt that can creep in when you're getting Vinaya visions, and believing the visions can sometimes be a problem as you're going through the process of self-realization, of course. So what happened next was quite astounding, to be honest with you. We might as well call it what it is. So what was happening was that when this little drip or this little level of golden energy started in the right lung, I hadn't shown these diagrams to the healing partner. Now, I would periodically, but in this diagram, I hadn't shown it to her. But she started telling me in our healing meeting, she started telling me that she had a little strip of her right lung that felt completely clear, as if it wasn't there. Now, I didn't register at first because she was using the words, "It feels like that bit of my lung is not there." I think she said. And as these visions progressed, I realized what was going on is that what she was feeling in her lung was matching exactly what these visions were telling us, basically. So if we carry on to the next diagram, you can see that the golden energy is filling up the right lung slowly. And periodically, she would be feeling this clearness in her lung moving up her lung, exactly in time with the visions. And she would say things like, well, I don't know, I can't feel my lung there. And then I realized that actually what she was describing was a normal lung, because most people can't feel their lungs, can they? But somebody suffering from severe asthma, actually, they can feel their lungs, and it's like a heavy weight. It's like a heavy weight weighing down in their chest, so they can feel their lungs all the time. So what she was describing was it was just not there, which is how it's supposed to be, basically. So this is when we realized, okay, that means that's the healing finished, that's moving up the lung. So in this diagram, we've got another slap, and we don't know why that is exactly. But you've got all sorts going on in this diagram, haven't you? You've got the finished bit, which is moving up the right lung. You've got some cutting going on in the golden energy, which is cutting away the alveoli, cutting away more scar tissue. But you've also got some regrowth happening as well, the little sparkly bits as well. That's building new alveoli. We did get some messages, of explanation sometimes. You got the word alveoli and regrowing and things like that. So we did know a little bit what was going on at the time. Okay, so this next one is fairly interesting, but we don't know why exactly. But the top one there is showing us entry points of some kind. Now, we haven't figured this out completely at all. But so you got one stream of energy coming into the healing partner and going round the neck. And that one's got red energy in it. And then you got this other stream coming above the head and then going down through the center of the head and down into the body. And that's got purple in it. So we're not 100% sure exactly what this means, apart from showing us different entry points for different types of healing energy. And there's going to be a lot more learning to be had about this, of course. And then in the bottom diagram, we've got the lung filling up some more, and some of everything going on in there as well. And now more of the same. Now you can see that the lung is filling up almost to the top in that bottom diagram. And she was feeling it exactly the same, matching the visions perfectly. And there's no communication on this between Veronica and the healing partner. All the communication with the healing partner was going through myself. We did that on purpose, really. Well, I think Veronica started that on purpose right from the start, just to stop any sort of cross-contamination of information, just to make it clear, really. So we've got some red in this diagram. Yeah, and imagine how weird this was at the start when we were only just forming network healers. We didn't know how we were going to work. We didn't know about the virtual tank. We didn't know about magnetic enzymes. We didn't know much, really, compared to what we know now. And so Veronica was getting these visions, quite intricate, detailed visions. So yeah, it was definitely some head scratching going on. We were meeting it every couple of weeks, weren't we? I think, and most of our meetings were just trying to figure out what these visions meant, wasn't it? So in this diagram, we've got some red still going on. So we still think that the red bits is activating new growth. We've got some of the filling up going on there as well. And she was feeling this moving up her lungs at the same time. And again, we've got more filling up of the lungs. So in the middle diagram there, you can see that the right lung is completely full. That's done. And she was feeling that, exactly. And she even felt the little tip of the left lung starting to become clear as well, right on cue. And we've got some more stuff going on in there, more cutting and more regrowing as well. And here we're up to the 10th, 21. So this is over a fairly long period of time. We'll talk about the time period in a minute. 19th of the 10th, 21. Now things are starting to clear a little bit. The work in there is starting to clear a little bit, isn't it? We've still got some red going on down the trachea. And the left lung is filling up some more. But then we've got these weird little lines or hairlines going across, in the bottom diagram, going across the lung. We're still not really sure what that is, but this next slide offers some explanation. So you could say, so if you look at the top diagram now, you could say that those two lines are depicting where the golden energy will be next. As if this is the next section that we're going to fill with golden energy. And then in the bottom diagram, it's got these arrows, one going one way, one going the other way. And then there is Santa and his sleigh. I think that's just a part of higher mind humor of some kind. But this one way and the other way thing, we're not really sure what that means, apart from that it's showing us something to do with the movement of that healing process. It's either a circulation movement, or it's a back and forth movement of some kind, or shearing. It's not just filling it up as if you're just filling up a jug of water. It's not doing that. There's something else going on there, another type of movement, but we don't know what that is yet. And so there's, as I was saying, there is still a lot more to learn about this, really. And this one here is just to show you, really, that our higher minds do have a sense of humor. Now, this is Santa Claus, which is fishing in one of the lungs. And this kind of goes along with, I think maybe we were hoping it would be going quicker, perhaps. So there's a little bit of impatience there. So Santa is fishing with a rod and hooking up the energy, trying to make it go up the lung quicker. And then Santa falls off the back of the shoulder. So it's clearly showing us that our higher minds do have humor. There's humor involved in this. Yeah. Excellent. But as you can see, the lungs are almost finished here. And again, the healing partner was feeling that movement move up the lungs. And then lastly, this is when the lungs were completely finished. That middle diagram there, the lungs are completely finished. And healing partner, again, was feeling that exactly. And those lungs, from that moment on, have been clear ever since. So nothing has changed from that time. And that was the 10th of the 2nd, 22. that both lungs were completely filled with golden energy, completely clear, and that has never changed. She has felt them completely clear since then. Now, there is lots of other stuff going on with this particular healing partner, and her self-realization journey has got all sorts of medical issues intertwined with it. So this is where we stop the journey here, because if we go any further, it's going to really mainly talk about her process of self-realization. You know, all the diagrams there showing the trachea and veins and things going up and down the trachea has to do with her process, and it has to do with karmic debt. Because after this diagram, you know, so this is only halfway through this book at this point, and there's another half, but the other half is mainly to do with her process and karmic debt. Because at this point, she gets in the vision, she gets a sheath put on top of the trachea, and it's like a restriction. And that doesn't allow the tightness in the trachea to subside for a long time. And she's still got it, in fact. And it's to do with karmic debt, and it's to do with the negative cycle of her self-realization process. So we've cut that here because we don't want to confuse the issue, because we're just talking about asthma, and we're talking about the lungs and this particular case study, and how we're going to use this process moving forward in the research project. So we're going to leave it there in terms of the Vinaya visions. Okay, so that's an example of Vinaya visions. And we don't know how extensive this is going to be as part of Network Healers, but we're teaching the process of Vinaya visions so that if we need to, we can do this again perhaps for other conditions. And it's quite possible that we get a case study for each condition that we're going to work on, and then we use that case study to then start a research project. And then, you know, as we progress over the years, we can move on to all sorts of different medical problems, medical conditions. So basically, just to show you this list again, I showed you this at the start. Number 1, remove mucus. Number 2, send protection from infections. Number 3, remove allergies or genetic susceptibilities. Actually, I'll just remind you of the drawing while I'm at it. Number 1, remove mucus. So that was that brown sludge coming out of her nose. And a later vision as well with the JCB, the digger, scraping out the rest of it. And then number 2, send protection from infection. So that was this purple. First of all, there was a purple stream of healing energy going inside, but also a cloud. It's like a protective cloud over her of purple, a purple cloud. I'm not going to say purple energy because it's not necessarily the frequency of the energy or anything. It's maybe a metaphor. And by the way, we have researched since and found that purple is actually considered the color of protection. So our high minds used that, and we didn't know that it meant protection, but they used that color. Number 3, remove allergies or genetic susceptibilities. This is when the purple cloud started forming into healing energy, and then white and gold started falling into the healing partner. And we think that was actually the healing energy of protection turning into actually removing the genetic issues causing the allergies. And then number 4, cut out damaged epithelial cells and smooth muscle cells of the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles lining. This is when you get these streaks of golden energy lining all the vessels, and we think that was cutting out all the damaged stuff. And then rebuild cilia. Number 5, rebuild cilia. This is where we saw the healing energy going up into the nose, the mouth, the nose, and also over to the ears as well, the eustachian tubes. So we think that was rebuilding the cilia, the little hairs that are so important, along with mucus, for trapping allergens and irritants. And then number 6, remove scar tissue in the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. So Removing damaged cells, yes, but also scar tissue as it builds up. All that needs to be removed. And that's going to be deconstructing magnetic enzymes, isn't it, if we go into the actual type of healing energy. And then 7, rebuild epithelial and smooth muscle cells of the airways. So that's when the little sparkles were coming along. And actually, well, first of all, there was the red energy, which was activating new cellular regrowth. That will be regulatory magnetic enzymes switching on the genes in the cells to start proliferating or growing new cells. And then there was the sparkles, which is actually the growing of new cells. And that might correspond to constructive magnetic enzymes, enzymes that are going around actually building the cells. And then number 8, growing or building new alveoli. So completely new alveoli were growing because the old ones must have been too far gone, basically. So new ones were budding off and growing. And that was all the sparkles as well. And then number 9 was removing the damaged ones, the damaged alveoli. That was golden energy. So all that particular chunk out of the book, out of her healing journey, took 17 months. 18th of the 9th, 2020, all the way through to the 10th of the 2nd, 2022. 17 months. Now, we want to change that. We want to make it go quicker. So we've got a research project coming up, haven't we? And we want to start with cases of severe asthma because of this case study that we've got. We want to turn that into a research project. Now, we're going to have other case studies and that's going to turn into other research projects. But we're going to start with asthma. And what we want to do is have more participants with severe asthma and do this exact same procedure on them, basically. But 17 months is a bit long. It would be much better if it was shorter. And we know that we can increase the speed because in the last lesson, we talked about the Mayer organ and how we can increase the speed of healing. And there's various different methods. And the Rasaja membrane method is a very important method when it comes to research, because the Rasaja membrane method is going to be detectable because it works with building a carbon-based framework within the affected cells. Now, as I was saying before, this is still in the experimental phase, really, the Rasaja membrane. We're still testing it out, to be honest. But this is what we want to do now, moving forward with any healing projects that is going to be part of any research project, is to use the Rasaja membrane method. And we don't know how long it's going to take, but 7 months would be a good place to start. Cutting it down from 17 to 7 months would be very useful because, especially for a research project, if research projects just go into the years, then it's much more difficult to do. So 7 months is probably the maximum we want as part of a research project for a participant within our healing program to monitor them before and all the way during and then after, and to get good data from that. 7 months is probably the maximum. So that's what we're going to aim for, and then we'll see what happens, basically. No, so hopefully the opposite. In fact, the process of self-realization just confuses things, to be honest with you. Yeah. And we're already trying to explain this out of mainstream method, and then if we then throw in a self-realization thing, it's just going to be too much for any research project. So you're absolutely right. We are expecting this to not be anything to do with self-realization, and so it would be a lot easier and cleaner to collect data. Yeah. But who knows? Expect the unexpected. You never know what's going to happen, really. But that would be the easiest, that's for sure. Okay, so there we go, really. Any more questions or discussion points about that? And no, she didn't at all, and she felt that it helped her asthma. However, there are different types of asthma, and I know somebody else who has asthma, one of our other programs, and he has a different type of asthma. It's not allergic asthma, but he struggles doing the breathing exercises because it does make him cough and splutter. So it can trigger it a little bit. But I still think that it's beneficial, because if they could train themselves to do the breathing exercises, it really is going to strengthen the lungs in the end. So I think it's a case of being careful and knowing what type of asthma you're dealing with, but being very careful with it, but trying it anyway. Because if you can manage to build up that tolerance and actually build up a practice like that, then yeah, the lungs do get stronger and stronger the more you do it, whatever type of asthma. Yeah, well, I guess you could say that it's always in the back of your mind as a healer, because everybody needs to learn about self-realization. It's the goal of life, isn't it? So I guess you can't completely separate it. No matter where somebody is in their spiritual development journey, it is always a part of our education that we want to teach people about, isn't it? Yeah, 100%. And can you imagine when all that is part of mainstream healthcare as well? I mean, the effect that karma originally, a bit of karma can have on somebody's life, and then the knock-on effects on their health, medical conditions. It's just a big domino effect, really. And the more we can make people aware of that, the better. And this is what the research project's all about. It's about getting this into mainstream healthcare, because this is all about healthcare. And then eventually self-realization, as you just mentioned. Self-realization is the goal, and karma stops us from getting to the goal. So education around self-realization should be in healthcare as well. That's where all this is going eventually. You know, can you imagine when spirituality, in effect, is just part of mainstream healthcare? You know, at the moment, everyone wants to be well. That's kind of how people see it, right? But eventually, people will sort of see it slightly differently and say, well, everyone wants to evolve. That's how it should be. Everyone wants to evolve quicker. So yeah, self-realization is, you can't really take it out of anything, really, at the end of the day, can you? So we're gonna have a lesson next week on the procedure, on the procedural aspects of taking on a healing partner. Just go through each step bit by bit, so just to remind everybody, because I think the next lesson after that will be the role playing, just to give everyone a bit of practice in talking to a healing partner. It's just going to be us, the tutors, though, of course, not going to be a real healing partner yet. And that will hopefully set everyone up for taking on healing partners. And then there'll be a lesson on the free flow project. I think I got the order wrong there, but I think the free flow project, there's a lesson on that as well. And that's the protocol or the procedure for the project, so that everybody knows roughly what we're doing. And then an exam. And then we're going to start getting people healing partners and building a new healers hub, and then hopefully start the project somewhere in September, maybe. And there'll be the summer months to consolidate things. So if there's any assignments still need to be done, and sorting out people's whatever, there's the summer months to do then as well. And then people can start taking on healing partners, and although probably start with friends and family and under supervision, and then go from there. Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be in person. None of this has to be in person, to be honest with you. So, yeah, and there's lots of different types of supervision as well. We can sit in on meetings, or we can just supervise communication, or we can just, or in some cases just be there to help and advise and to guide. So there's lots of different levels of supervision that we'll work out. All right, well, are we about there? Should we call it a day there then? Lovely. All right, well, yeah, have a good week, and we'll see you next Monday.